In 1953, Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay became the first people in history to successfully climb Mount Everest. Their incredible feat made headlines around the world and inspired countless others to pursue their own dreams of climbing to the world's highest peak. But what about the first person to try to climb Mount Everest? His name was George Mallory, and he was an English climber who made several attempts to climb Mount Everest in the early 1920s. Mallory was an accomplished climber, but he faced numerous challenges in his attempts to reach the summit. The weather was often unpredictable and dangerous, and the terrain was incredibly difficult to navigate. Despite these obstacles, Mallory remains determined to be the first person to rise to the top of the world. One day, Mallory went on what would be his last attempt to climb Mount Everest. He was accompanied by a climber named Andrew Irwin, and the two men began their ascent with great hope and great determination. As they climbed higher and higher, the weather became more treacherous. The wind howled around them, churning up snow and ice and making them almost impossible to see. Despite the dangerous conditions, Mallory and Irwin moved forward, determined to reach the top. And then something miraculous happened. The clouds dissipated and they bathed in the sunlight. Mallory was looking at the summit of Everest shining brilliantly in the sun, and he knew he was closer than ever before to achieving his dream. With renewed determination, Mallory began to rise faster and more confidently. He could see the top in front of him and he knew he was almost there. And then, suddenly, tragedy struck. Irwin slipped on the ice and began to fall, dragging Mallory with him. They fell down the slope, their bodies battered and shattered by the impact. Mallory was badly wounded but refused to surrender. He got to his feet with all his might and began to climb again, determined to reach the top no matter what. But his injuries took their toll on his body, and he soon began to feel weak and dizzy. With each step he took, Mallory felt that he was sliding closer and closer to the brink of exhaustion. And finally, he reached the top of Everest. He stood there for only a few moments, looking at the world beneath him before collapsing to the ground. Mallory was the first person to climb Mount Everest, but he didn't live to tell the story. His body was found on the mountain a few decades later, and it remains a mystery whether he and Irwin actually made it to the top. But despite the tragedy of his latest ascent, Mallory's spirit lives on, inspiring generations of climbers to pursue their own dreams and conquer the heights of the world's highest peaks.